I sat around my family's dinner table, which in my family is more like a courtroom than a dinner table. You see, arguments fly faster than a plate of food gets from one end to the other. And to be clear, no one cares about who wins. It's the sport of it all that matters. But I would sit around my family's dinner table in silence. As a child, I had a stutter, and I let my otherness swallow my voice. What made me different, even in my family, made me silent. My Zadei, my grandpa, is a 5-foot-tall Holocaust survivor whose accent is as thick as it was when he was in Siberia when he was born, and his conviction is as strong as it was as if he were still in Israel where he spent his childhood. He saw me quiet one day and pulled me aside. We walked together to his home office where he rummaged around papers that to me looked as old as mankind itself until he finally pulled out one particular article that he was looking for, and he gave it to me. It read, "A Brilliant Mind." And it was an article about a medical device that he invented for paraplegic patients at the hospital in which he worked. Recalling countless stories that my Zadei had shared with me about times he felt anti-Semitism, both in and outside of the workplace, I turned to him. I said, "Zadei, how is it possible that you invented this? How could you have thought of something that no one else thought of?" Zadei, in his typically aphoristic English, at that point looked me square in the eyes. And he said, "Andrew, sometimes it takes being on the outside to think differently. Never forget that." We have all felt othered at some point in our lives, whether it was for the way we thought, the way we looked, the way we carried ourselves. But what if I told you that that thing that you were most embarrassed about, that made you feel most socially isolated, that you were afraid to share with others, was the same thing that would make you uniquely successful in business, that would lead you to find the love of your life, that would make you the most interesting and unique person, that would give you the superpower to make a unique impact on the world around you? Now, as a 10-year-old, I wasn't mature enough to internalize the depth of my Zadei's wisdom. I was, however, mature enough to run a business. Or at least so I thought. You see, for a variety of reasons, I saw the opportunity to sell stickers and sports memorabilia to my friends in school. So I did what any 5th grader would do, or at least any 5th grader that would eventually end up at the GSB. I wrote letters to sports teams across the country. No response. Soon, my investors, aka my parents, were worried about my cash burn, aka my exorbitant spend on postage and printing costs, and came to me concerned. I went to speech therapy that week, and with a look of concern, my speech pathologist, Ori, asked me what was the matter. And I shared with Ori that the first of my many Fortune 500 companies was going under. And when Ori asked questions about the particular business operations, he came up with the idea that instead of writing the teams, just gave them a call. You see, at this time in my life, I would not order food at a dinner table. I wouldn't raise my hand in class out of fear that my voice would get in the way of my success. So the idea of using my voice as a means to allow my business to succeed was unthinkable. But like a good CEO listening to his board chair, I heeded Ori's advice. I called the Long Island Ducks, a minor league sports team nearby where I grew up. I made my pitch, I introduced myself as someone who stutters, and then we hung up. A week later, a box of stickers appeared, and I began calling teams nonstop. It was the first time in my life that I realized that what made me different, if reframed, could in fact be my superpower. My liabilities could become my assets. What I thought would hold me back allowed me to be differentially successful in the field of business. In other words, sometimes it takes being on the outside to think differently. I've always loved music. Maybe it's because when you sing, you don't stutter. Does anyone here know what famous artists like Taylor Swift, Jimi Hendrix, Aretha Franklin, John Lennon, Elvis Presley all have in common? They couldn't read sheet music. They never learned. Yet traditional music education focuses nearly exclusively on teaching us how to read. But when we look at the outsiders, the innovators, their approach, differentiated, allows them to be inspired in a unique way. They don't spend their time focusing on what other people create. They draw on that influence to create something new. In other words, sometimes it takes being on the outside to think differently. And by the way, it's not just in fifth grade business or in the field of music. 50% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children. On this list includes Google, Yahoo, Moderna, Estee Lauder. Founders like Sergey Brin and Larry Page and Estee Lauder all reported feeling bullied as children for their differences. Difference begets disruption, which drives innovation. They have all embraced Zadei's wisdom. Sometimes it takes being on the outside to think differently. I stand before you today as the proud founder of a VC-backed music AI company that helps musicians like me catch up to the geniuses in the field and allows those geniuses to upload their audio and produces sheet music instantly for them. I stand before you today as the founder of a national nonprofit focusing on refugee and lower income student empowerment in US public schools. And I stand before you today as a proud alum of a stuttering nonprofit that helps young people who stutter feel empowered through the arts. And if this sounds self-congratulatory to you, it's because it is. You see, I'm proud of what I do, and I am proud that I have embraced Zadei's advice and used it to create environments in which musicians, refugees, and other stutterers can feel that their difference gives them a superpower. We feel pressure to compel. But what if, for a moment, we imagine that difference, your sense of otherness, the thing that you may have thought of earlier in the speech, as having the unique ability to allow you to change the communities you care most about? What if we embrace the wisdom of the innovators in music, in business, and otherwise, and embrace the wisdom of Zadei? Zadei couldn't be here today. He's in Florida enjoying the sun. But I know what he would tell you if he were here. He would say, sometimes it takes being on the outside to think differently. Never forget that.